Hi boys and girls, hi Tinker Elementary. I'm coming back to you guys to read another story to you that I would normally read in the library around this time of year if we were back at school and back in the library. It's one of my favorite books that I like to read around springtime and also around Easter, which I know we just had a few days ago. It is a classic and there's a lot of different versions to it, so I chose an older version that I have at my home. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. This is actually The Tale of Peter Rabbit. So you guys know there's a movie out about this story, and there's, like I said, a ton of different editions of this story, but I just chose a classic one that I have in my home library that I want to share with you guys. Just like the other stories that we've done, I do have an activity that kind of goes along with this story that you guys can do at home when you're done with this story. If you have a chance to hold on to it till next year and I see you next year and you can share it with me, I would love to see it because it'll be really fun. And it's something that we would have done in the library with this story had we been able to do it together during our regular story time. So I'm going to go ahead and start. This is called The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and it's by Beatrix Potter. And this is one of my favorite books that I get to share with you guys in the library normally. So I'm glad that I still get to share it with you guys, even though we're kind of doing it a little bit different this year. So this is called The Tale of Peter Rabbit. All right, I'm going to try to hold it up where you guys can kind of see it. There we go. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put into a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But do you think Peter did the same thing? Did what he was supposed to? We're going to find out. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Oh my goodness, what do you think is going to happen to Peter? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. What is going to happen to Peter? Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden under a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Ka-choo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity not very fast, and looking around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond, where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, 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 scratch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end. All right. I hope you guys liked that story if you hadn't heard it before. This is a story that we have in the library. So next year when we come back to school, we're back in the library. If you remember Peter Rabbit and you want to check it out and take it home with you, just ask me about it and I can help you find this book to check out in the library. So I said that there was an activity that goes along with it that if you remember and you can hold on to it, you can share it with me next year. And I would love to see the creations that you guys make. But what you can do is you can take the story and put yourself in it, in a book that you can make. I titled mine, My Day with Peter Rabbit. So basically, if you had the chance to go into the story and meet Peter Rabbit in real life, what would you do? Would you want to play games with him? Would you want to show him your house, show him your bedroom, show him all your toys? Would you want to go to a park with him and play? Think about anything you could do. What would you like to do to spend your day with Peter Rabbit. So of course, since I'm the librarian and we have such a cool library at Tinker, my choice was I would want to bring him to our school and I would want to show him our cool library. So when you open your book, I just took a big white piece of paper. I folded it like a book. I did my cover on here where I put my title, and then I did my color illustration or cover illustration where I just drew a picture of Peter Rabbit. And then on the inside, on the opening page, I put my story. So I put, if I got to spend a day with Peter Rabbit, I would take him to our library and show him around and read his story to him that is about him. Then I would let him look around and maybe even check out a library book. And then, of course, I put my name at the end since I'm the author of this particular story that I made. And then on the other side, I drew a picture. So you guys could see here's some of our bookshelves with all of our books on them. Here's me standing there by our library carpet. So if you know where we usually do our story time, I drew our story time carpet, and I drew my rocking chair. And as you guys know, if you've seen me draw pictures in the library, Mrs. Scott is not the best artist, so it's kind of a funny looking rocking chair, but that's supposed to be our rocking chair that we do our stories in. And there's Peter Rabbit standing right next to me. So do you guys think he's going to behave himself in the library, or do you think he's going to run around and crazy and we'll have to teach him the rules? But anyway, that's my story. So like I said, you guys can make this, and if you remember and you can share it with me next year at the library, I would love to see your stories, because I know you guys are going to come up with some really cool ones. So that is Peter Rabbit for now. So hopefully I will be back with you guys soon with a new story. So have a good day, and I will see you guys later. Bye.